Rules of engagement were written by lawyers in New York at UN headquarters. They wrote an 11-page listing of the rules of engagement. Reads like any legalese document, you know, if something happens, see tab A, subsection B, para C. If this happens, then okay, refer to Annex A and accomplish this. Well, for a soldier on the front line who's literally facing down, you know, a tank pointed at him, okay, where does this fall into the 11-page rules? Okay, well then I better call higher and see what happens. And you call higher and they say, well, they've got a tank, yeah? Okay, well, what have you got? It's like, well, we've got, you know, 6 of us with our sidearms. Well, you're not gonna stop a tank. Okay, well, you better get out of the way. All right, let them through. Rules of engagement. Note the following rules, number 1 through number 7, describe options in terms of which the key paragraph 13 sets forth normal daily situation, exclamation point. Rule 6, rule number 1, that's what it says, authority to carry arms. Option A. Authority granted to carry arms.
Okay. Note in
both option
B,
A and option
warning
B
shots are authority.
Rule number 4, option A.
Annexes B and C refer.
See paragraph 15 and Annex A.
UN stop.
UN stop.
Or I fire.
A, observe and report, withdraw. That's what the UN wrote to soldiers.
We were called CC UNPRO 4, right? Canadian Contingent of the UN Protection Force. We didn't protect anybody in my book. I didn't see much protection going on. I seen a whole lot of watching them do what they wanted to do and, you know, that kind of stuff, but I didn't see anybody being really protected by us.
The contradictions of being a warrior class, a proud class of men and women, we're there to help, but because of the situation, because of the context, everything is set up that they can't help.
We've had friends of mine that have opened up to me that, you know, had to lay there in trenches and listen to women being raped and then executed.
Ethnic cleansing, concentration camps, torture, and systematic rape were among the many atrocities committed by all sides.
The worst story I heard that come out of there was the story of when they nailed a pregnant woman to the floor and cut the fetus out and nailed that to the floor. That was, I think of that every day. Like, yeah, it's in my brain, it'll never come out. Like, it's...
Those are the most terrible stories, you know, I've heard. Being ordered to watch detail for the later crimes, investigations, document rapes, tortures of women and girls. I mean, these men they're left with that.
Every soldier goes into battle to effect change, positive change. You want to make it better for the people that are there. So when you're not able to effect change, when you're told you can't effect change, and by the way, you can be witness to the complete opposite of change, the carrying on of the atrocities, it leaves you numb, it leaves you broken.
Because of the strict rules of engagement, UN soldiers often felt like targets. They were physically and psychologically tormented by the warring factions who knew they couldn't retaliate.
If the former warring party decided they were upset, they'd put one off your helmet and your Kevlar helmet would explode, your face would be shredded, but you'd be alive. If they wanted to kill you, they shot you in the throat or the face.
Alex Gillis from Margaree, Nova Scotia, joined the Army before he finished high school. He remembers a nervous Canadian private, intimidated by a bold sniper.
It was like right over our heads. The direction was spot on, maybe 8 or 9 feet over. Like they weren't trying to make it too obvious. But anyway, he hit the ground a second time. So I laughed that time, and he didn't think it was so funny. And I said, well, you can't be doing that. Well, what am I supposed to do if they're shooting? Well, they're shooting above your head. You already know they're not shooting at you, but this was after a lot of people had been shot at, and specifically shot at. So he jumped twice, and I said, you can't be doing that. I said, now you're just making it fun for him. I said, if you go back up there again, he's going to shoot a third time, you're going to jump. He's going to shoot a fourth time, you're going to jump. So I went up, sat there a few minutes, made it obvious it was a different person. Okay, you go over there. So whoever was shooting had a rifle, most likely a scope, as there was only one round, one high-powered round. And sitting there for a few minutes, and all of a sudden, crack. I heard it go over, I looked around, picked him out in the tree line, and I gave him the finger. He never fired again. That was it. Just don't let anybody know you're scared.
There was incidents where they would shoot at the trailer, the ladder on the back of the pod trucks, and just kind of, you know, just to let us know they were there type of thing, right? Just playing games with the UN.
Blair Davis left his hometown of Liverpool, Nova Scotia to join the Air Force. Deployed to Bosnia as a cook, he didn't expect to arrive in a war zone.
It was midnight and the sirens went off, the warning sirens that there was imminent threat. There was gunfire, there was the whistling, you always hear the whistling of coming in of, you know, the shell. They were just outside our barrier and they were basically harassing us and there was nothing we could do. I talked to one of the guys from the supply techs and he was like, oh yeah, one of the shells landed on our ammo bunker last night and went thud into the soil. If that shell had gone off, I wouldn't be here today. The whole camp would have been wiped out.
Enemy snipers proved to be particularly lethal. Steve Dornan was traveling with French soldiers when their convoy was attacked.
I was out actually with the Legion, and we were in two of their carriers. The commander of the patrol was ahead in the first vehicle, and I was in the second vehicle, and both of us were literally, you know, from chest up, exposed. We pulled up to a checkpoint, but of course, basically, you know, we'd stopped, and they milled about a little bit, and all of a sudden I looked, and they were gone. I thought, you know, he just, you know, slipped off. Lost his footing and you know, maybe dropped down, but he didn't come up. And our vehicle radioed their vehicle and didn't get any response. And he'd been shot in the throat by a sniper. And the inside of the whole vehicle was red. They got him in the artery, and he was literally spraying blood everywhere. And his crew was tending to him. And I remember his eyes, he's just so vacant, so pleading, so scared. And he died in the back of the vehicle, surrounded by his crew.
Soldiers on all sides grew increasingly unwilling to follow orders. In one village, Mila Mitrovic refused to throw a grenade into a basement.
This is one of these situations when I told people very openly, I'm not willing to do that. I'm not willing to throw the bomb. What if you have civilians, women, children there, hiding? I'm not willing to do that. And I didn't. Actually, I went to several houses. And actually, I found people over there. Serbs and Croats, together. Most of them elderly people. Am I proud of something? I'm proud of that. I did not kill anybody. Probably I saved somebody. Maybe it's not a big deal for somebody, but for me, it's a lot.
Steve Dornan was on the ramp of a cargo plane just as it was about to take off from Sarajevo airport when he saw a French soldier running up to him.
He was carrying a little boy. And little boy was, he'd been playing soccer. And, you know, it's all you can do. You know, there's no video games or anything. He just had a little football. And the areas around the airport were really heavily mined. And the little guy had stepped on a shoebox mine. It went off and blew his leg off, blew his arm off, blew most of his face off, most of his head. And I'll never forget, and he gave him to me. He said, "Steve, don't let him die here." And you have to realize we lost a lot of, soldiers. We had Canadians that were killed, but children are innocent, and just playing soccer. And I took them, what was left of them, and where he's bleeding out all over me, and did the best I could to hold on to him, hold his face, look into his eye, and got on the airplane. We went to military power to get outside of Bosnian airspace, so this boy wouldn't die in Bosnia. And he didn't. We made it outside and he died in my arms over the Adriatic.
The Canadian soldiers in Yugoslavia experienced traumatic conditions, stressful, horrifying, and heartbreaking. In September of 1993, in the village of Medak, Croatia, the terror continued. Vince Rigby was there with the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry.
Medak Pocket was a place where the Serbs and Croatians, they were within spitting distance of each other.
On September 9th, the Croatians violated a ceasefire and engaged Serbian troops. That's when the UN arrived.
We watched the Serbs and the Croatians moving their rigs up and down the roads over the days. When I drove in, the Serbs were at that point in time moving all our artillery pieces in behind a mountain right behind our house. Got into the house and I told the officer, and within, half an hour, the Croatians walked round right up to the mountain and I think wiped everybody out.
Vince and the rest of the PPC Allied troops were soon embroiled in the fiercest combat Canadian soldiers had faced since the Korean War.
We started out in the house, the Medak house. That's where we took the artillery. That's where we got one of our first firefights. They shot at us and the bullets hit right in front of us, bit dirt in our face, whacked a tree beside us, and then they just proceeded to pound the house.
When Vince and his comrades went to create a buffer zone between the Serbs and the Croats, it provoked a violent retaliation from the Croatian forces.
Still, blasted more at us, and then come nightfall, it was just all out. We did shoot back at one point in time, just as much as they were here, we're not going nowhere, right? First, a little scary, but at the end of it, not even halfway through the end of it, we got mad. It was like, you dare fire at us type of thing. You know who we are, and we're Canadians, and we'll come after you.
Canadian soldiers tried to enter a Serbian village, but were stopped by Croatian soldiers at a roadblock. UN commanders ordered them to wait. They did, a decision that still causes anguish today.
We had to sit there in the middle of the dark and listen to them, killing all the women and children and whatever else was left over on the other side. The one general, he didn't want us in there until, they were done doing what they had to do.
Running out of patience, Canadian Commander James Calvin gave an impromptu roadside news conference to pressure Croatian commanders at the roadblock.
At some stage, you got to cut the bullshit and get on with the job. And all I've heard right now from the Croatian people at my level here is a bunch of half-baked excuses aimed at delaying us from getting on with the operation.
Once through the roadblock, Canadian soldiers entered the village of Medak, but all was eerily quiet. Even seasoned soldiers were shocked by what they saw. There was devastation and death.
We could smell them. We were that close, burning the bodies. Now, to this day, like pork or certain things, when I get a certain smell, it flashes right back to that point in time that we should have moved forward no matter what happened. We should never let that happen. We didn't do a whole lot. I think we should have done more, I think we could have saved some people in them towns, whether we lost people or not. That's what we were there for, and they should have let us do our job. It wasn't a very nice place at the end. I think nobody went down there, come back normal.
With war still raging, soldiers began to complete their first tours. After witnessing the worst of humanity, they would be returning home to their loved ones. Steve Dornan was among them. Like many others, he found it difficult to cope with the routine of family life.